I see shattered, you see whole. I see broken.
Our program today is a most important one. It is for me personally, and I've waited a long time for this particular program because it's on employment for people with physical disabilities. We couldn't manage a program on all kinds of disabilities in 1 hour all by itself. Physical disabilities is more than we can manage in this time period, in this 60 minutes. But we have among our guests today my own daughter, Maggie Delany. She's my oldest daughter, and as any parent will attest, when you have a child with disabilities, you are always wondering and maybe worrying too about what will become of them. Will they be independent? Will they be self-sufficient? Or when you are no longer able to care for them, what's going to become of that extension of who you are? How will they manage and how will they survive? So being employed, and also because my daughter is like any of your sons or daughters, she has dreams. She's her own person. She cares about what she is in this world, and she has a contribution to make. So I've added that as a personal note, but I know for all parents as well as all people with disabilities, it's when you go to your high school reunion and everybody says, well, what have you been doing? One of the things at the top of the list is what you've been doing employment or in terms of a career. Religiously, we speak of calling and what we're on this earth to do. It's a part of our identity. And in an unusual approach today, I have asked Larry McNabb of the Office of the Blind, the Kentucky Office of the Blind, to be a part of this program because he is a professional that works with folks with disabilities. Ordinarily, we keep it in the realm of peer support, and our program is oriented towards the social aspect of folks with disabilities. But because it's employment, and that's directly part of what you do, Larry, I really felt the need for the added resource. So welcome, we're glad you're here.
It is my pleasure to be on this show and to share with the viewers about the pros and the cons, the advantages and disadvantages, and with those that have a physical disability that you had mentioned, as well as some of the misconceptions that employers have when it comes to physical disabilities.
And we really do want to get into that. That's I don't think people that ordinarily are unaware of folks with disabilities can appreciate the complexities and the complications of the relationships, the employee-employer relationships that take place, and the co-worker relationships that can happen in the workplace.
That's exactly right. A lot of times we take for granted when we look at our own self and we see how, if we're employed, how things go in everyday life. But when we put in a disability or maybe even multiple disabilities, there's a different perspective that we have to take. And 10 years ago, when I first became a part of the Kentucky Office for the Blind, I was unaware of the things that are out there to help those that are blind or visually impaired be able to become more independent in everyday life, because I think there is a part of independent living that a lot of times if you don't feel independent in your own home, you have a struggle saying, how can I get outside of my home and become more independent? Get a competitive job out in the work field. And I think that's where I was introduced to a lot of things when I first started working with the agency that has helped me to better understand how to work with those that do have physical disabilities, and for me personally, those that are visual disabilities.
And that's just one thing that people might not be aware of, is that, and some of our guests today, all of our guests today are going to remind us that the employment challenge begins with getting out of bed sometimes and continues until bedtime.
That's right.
Includes everything. It's not like when I was teaching college students and they would joke about brushing their teeth while driving to class. these folks often have to get up extra early and stay up a little later to participate in the workforce.
They do, because there's extra routes you have to take each morning, extra jobs you have to do just to get ready before you even leave your home, to prepare yourself as you go out to the workplace, that many times we in the general population don't have to worry about that. And so since it takes longer for us, for those that do have a blind or visually impaired disability, it takes them a longer time to wrap things up, even in the evening. When some of us are going to bed, they may say, I have to put in a little extra time at the computer so that I can input things that I need to do for my work. So these are things that you're very correct, Mike, in saying that there is some things in everyday life that we don't really think about when it comes to physical disabilities, when we are without any disabilities in our own life.
I want to flesh out a little bit more the word disabilities, because it has so many different meanings, and I wanted to explore statistics in just a moment with you, because you are a resource. But when we say disabilities, we're talking about, and just physical disabilities, mobility, sensory, visual. You work with the Office of the Blind, but it includes deafness as well, and speech, and even beyond that, pain can be disabling.
It can be. The thing that makes it even more difficult, and it covers multiple areas of disability, is the invisible disabilities. The world around us may not even notice that we have a disability. So when we bump into someone in the grocery store or in the workplace, and we say, excuse me, but I didn't see you there, sometimes they can give that individual a weird look and maybe even say something and say, well, I'm standing right here. How could you not have seen me? How could you not have noticed me being here? And these are things that when you do have an invisible disability where the public can't see that, it does make it even more difficult at times.
Because that complicates the relational aspects of things. What's wrong with this rude person that they don't, pay attention, and that they don't care, and people make assumptions.
They do.
And if they don't recognize that you have a disability, they'll make moral judgments about you, and you have to overcome that as if you didn't have enough to overcome already.
And I think that's the thing that we have to remember when it comes to physical disabilities. The mental health disabilities that go along with the physical disabilities can really make it even more of an obstacle. The depression, the anxieties, just trying to deal with everyday life becomes so overwhelming. And many times those are some of the extra issues we have to deal with in the Office for the Blind and the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, is realizing that there's more than just that physical disability that's going on. So I think that's something that you're very correct. There's a lot of public perspective on what is normal and what is not normal, and when something's not normal, we are quick to judge.
And I want to just, an aside, quickly mention that we were together 3 years ago at a very touching workshop on suicide. You don't leave it at the office. At your church on Sunday morning at First Church in Burlington, I attended a workshop there on suicide that was as meaningful as any workshop I think I've attended in my life. And I'm 63 years old, almost 64. I've been to a lot of workshops. And consequently, you are aware of the things, the mental health aspects that you were just alluding to. You are in touch with those things as well as visual impairment. And I just want to recognize that, Larry.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Because when we're talking about disabilities, we do see that they're obviously, when you're having depression and anxiety and other mental health disorders, or as we like to say nowadays, to be more current with things, is say brain disease and call it exactly what it is. Our brain's not functioning the way it's supposed to. So I think that is something that we deal with when it comes to physical disabilities, is that point to say, I just can't go on the way I am. the struggle is just too much for me. And I think that's something that can really play heavily on someone with a disability or multiple disabilities that wasn't born that way. It wasn't a congenital issue that they were born with and had to live their whole life with.
Just the same. There's so many confusing numbers out there. When I first encountered how many folks with visual impairments are unemployed, I would hear 70, 80% of folks. And some of the numbers that I crunched that you sent to me from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and so forth suggested that folks with disabilities tend to run about twice that in terms of unemployment that the general population does. What are the numbers, Larry? I mean, it's confusing.
It is, and even for myself, it's very confusing, Mike, because you look at so many different studies, so much research that has been done in this field, and what I think the consensus that we need to pull from this is saying that those with disabilities, those that have a physical disability, are far more likely to be unemployed. And we need to change that. We need to change that perspective. We need to make it more of a level playing field like we do in other areas of our lives. And I think that when you look at the numbers can fluctuate. There can be some error. And I think the population that you're doing this study or this survey with could determine what kind of results you're getting. So yes, there are a lot of different numbers that vary greatly, but I think the bottom line of all of these studies pulled in together is that 80% of all jobs can basically be done with someone that is completely blind with the right accommodations. Wow. And I think that's one of them that really stands out for me personally as a vocational rehab counselor with the Office for the Blind.
Because people are so apprehensive about someone who's visually impaired working alongside them in their workplace. Oh my, what am I going to have to carry this person and do everything for them? Will they slip if the floor has been recently mopped? And all kinds of fears, phobias.
And I was kind of there with them before I started working with the Office for the Blind, because I had never worked with individuals that are blind or visually impaired. So I kind of know from the outside perspective what it is like. And sometimes that we do say, how can they be safe on the workplace when they can't see certain things? They can't do certain things the way someone that is visual can work with that. But the thing that I've realized is between having a job coach, having someone work with you specifically, having an employer that understands accommodations, having a support, an agency or multiple agencies working with that individual, you start opening the eyes of the employer as well as employees, co-workers, to say someone with a physical disability can do the same type of work many of us can see
absolutely
more clearly. So
gonna bring you back, ask you to hang around till the end of the program. We're gonna spend some time with some other guests. Larry, thank you for what you've contributed already. Our next guest today regarding physical disabilities is Michael Vrbanac. I first met Mike earlier this year in 2017. He was the office administrator at Cincinnati Veterans Hospital and Medical Center over on Vine Street in Cincinnati, but I learned more about Michael than that when I attended the graduation ceremony prior to my coming on board as a chaplain intern at Veterans Hospital. He had been a chaplain intern in the previous unit. So then one thing led to another, and I learned that Mike was a ordained Baptist minister and had been ordained in the 1990s. So you had a career before you began pursuing a career as a chaplain. And I was intrigued because we shared career paths, but also because of my interest in disabilities, noted that Michael was in a wheelchair and wasn't shy about asking about that. I was immediately impressed with his people skills. There was always a crowd at the office wanting to visit with him. So he has strengths before I picked up on any deficits that he might have. But I learned that Michael had Becker's muscular dystrophy, and eventually he shared with me a little of his bio, but I'm going to let you take over, Michael, and share with our audience anything that you would like for them to know.
Okay, I'll do the best I can. First, it's just a privilege to be on this program, and I was kind of excited about it because I thought I'm going to learn a lot, and that was certainly the case in hearing Larry talk, and it could even help me identify some of, that's why I've kind of struggled sometimes. It does take me longer to do things than the average person, and there is a lot of that emotional baggage that, at least for me, a lot of maybe negative self-talk, like I'm not as good as other people, and so that emotional drain, can just drain you, and so I just
especially in a hospital setting where speed
even more, in a high-paced setting like that, and kind of my inefficiencies, or that because of my disability, kind of comes to the forefront. So first, just thank you for letting me be on this show, and I hope it's just I can say something that might encourage someone out there that's watching this program, because I know whoever you are who may be watching, our situation, our circumstance is going to be different. There's as many disabilities almost as there are people, so there's so much variety out there, but I just hope that something, from my experience, might be helpful. So I would just say, in addition to all of that, that I just feel blessed having a disability. And that might sound strange, but there was a time when I didn't feel blessed. If I go back to childhood, my teenage years, when there were so many things that I wanted to be able to do, particularly in competitive sports, that I was unable to do or couldn't do to my satisfaction. And that was some time of frustration and anger for me, and I felt cursed, to be honest, with the disability. But later, as I kind of grew up through that time in my young adulthood and now middle-aged adult, and the different opportunities I've had to minister to people, I've realized that a disability has been probably the best blessing to ever happen to me. Doesn't mean that I don't have frustrations and irritations still at this point, because there are many, but I believe in a higher power, which I believe is God, and that He has helped me and is continuing to help me. And now I can say that as a chaplain, which is my most recent opportunity to serve fellow human beings, I'm finding out that a disability is again a blessing, because there's not people in the hospital that are there because everything's going great. They're there because their world's falling apart and they have a crisis of their health, and having someone maybe rolls up to them in a wheelchair is something that can help them to feel at ease, like, well, I don't know why that guy's in that wheelchair, but something, challenges he must be facing. So to me, now I'm able to give back because of my disability, and that's what brings me the greatest joy in my life.
I often wondered about that, Michael, how you were received by patients when you arrived bedside, or whatever the logistics were, and said, "Hi, I'm Chaplain Mike."
Yeah.
What kind of reception do you get?
Well, I'd like to think it's my congenial smile and warm personality that helps open the door, but I think it is really the wheelchair that really causes people to take notice that, I kind of come in at their level.
This is one of us.
Yeah, I'm not walking in there, I'm rolling in. We're at eye level, they're in a bed, I'm in a chair. We're just an immediate, hey, we're on the same level here. The playing field is even.
There isn't the condescending top down.
It's not the professional walking in that's going to save the day. It's just a fellow sojourner that's got some challenges too, and I think people relate to that well when they sense that somebody has experienced maybe not the exact same situation, but something possibly similar.
I'm going to be direct in the interest of time. The other day when we talked, and we've talked a good bit, you said to me, "I'm not sure I've experienced a lot of discrimination in employment situations."
Yeah.
And I said a couple things to you, and you said, "I'm going to have to think about that." Have you thought about it?
To be honest, not as much as I would have liked to before coming on air here.
But now, don't let me talk you into anything, Michael.
Yeah.
Maybe things have been good for you, and people have been accepting and receptive.
I would say 80% of the time I've been received very well. People have been very good to me. You know, aside from disability, one thing, when I started using a chair like this about 4 years ago, I noticed that there's a lot of good people out there. I know there's a lot of good people that are watching this program right now. I am just amazed. I just want to say thank you to the general public, because I know a lot of people out there that are watching this program care about people with disabilities. And I have had so many people literally get up from their chair at restaurants, wherever, open doors for me. People have been very, very gracious. And I hope that's true for other people, but maybe not. And I'm sorry if that's not been your experience. For me, being in a chair, there's been a difference. When I was using a chair, talk about hidden disabilities, when people didn't know I had a need, people are a lot different. Now that I'm in a chair, it's obvious, hey, that guy's got a challenge, you know, let's help him out. You know, when they can see it, people are much more apt.
And I've seen you walk,
Yeah.
and you know, it's a challenge. I mean, you're sitting there poised and well spoken, and it's almost invisible, except for the chair.
Right.
But as a teenager, you described coming in the summertime and being in pain from play.
Trying to keep up with
Yeah.
everybody, you know, and pushing myself too hard.
Yeah.
And that was just, but my whole life's been that way. I just tend to push myself too hard, and maybe people with disabilities, you want to achieve, you want to be able to do what other people do, and sometimes you overdo it because you're trying to make yourself something that you're not.
Well, maybe somebody sitting there listening to us right now and watching may say, hey, but this guy persevered, he worked hard, he made it, and that's all it takes.
Oh, boy. And nothing could be farther from the truth, because I would say, yeah, there has to be an inward motivation to want to, but for me, in my life, that's come externally, from support structures, from relationships, started with family. I think that's the key thing. I think here in Northern Kentucky, where family is such an important part of this culture, I think everybody that's watching knows that family is the most important piece that is needed in order for people with disability to achieve.
And a lot of people don't know it. Larry could have told you. A lot of families give up
Do they?
on their loved ones. I interrupted you, but
Okay.
I wanted to throw that in for the audience.
Okay. But I'm sure there are reasons for that, as far as, you know, just for a family caring for somebody with a disability, that's got to be something that is the most challenging thing they've ever faced, you know, because the emotions wrapped up into it, and just the strength it takes, and becoming tired and trying to care and be that support, to be everything to that child or that family member all the time, has got to be exhausting. So I can understand possibly why that may be.
Well, and when I said families give up, they give up on dreams and hopes
Oh, I see.
and careers. And you
Yeah.
know, why don't you just, this has
Okay.
gone on for years now, we're tired, and we aren't ever going to
Yeah.
win this.
Right.
And they just say, why don't you just draw your
Yeah.
SSID check or whatever and give it up.
Right. Yeah. Well, I can certainly understand why that discouragement could set in. And
Have you had troubles with employment?
well, you know, there have been times, you know, this last stint, my struggle has been in the last 4.5 years is only being employed part-time. So, and now most recently, you know, I added another part-time job and one semi-part-time to my, you know, so now things are a little bit better financially for us, but, you know, it's been a struggle. And I think during the time of working at VA as only a part-time employee, there was some struggles like, well, I would make so much more money if I just would say, hey, I give up, let's go on disability, you know. So it was kind of hard, and there were times when I thought maybe I should do that. But I'm glad I hung in there even after, you know, 4 years, till finally something broke and I was able to get into a field that I was trying to break into. And so it was a long time in coming, and there was discouragement along the way, but in the end, I guess perseverance did pay off, and so I'm so glad I didn't give up. But there were times when I was.
You have a wife and children. In fact, one of your sons is here. Did you think about them?
Yeah, I think too, you know, I want to be a good example to my kids that, you know, okay, maybe I was handed you know, some difficult playing cards to play with, but, you know, I didn't give up and I kept trying. And so, I guess that's maybe some inspiration too that I draw from them. But I would say even more than that, just having support, both in my, family growing up as a child and as a teenager to my family now, without their support, I would have gotten nowhere. So I'm really thankful for.
And very quickly, I do know from your biography a lot of support from church community as well growing
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah,
Some of your mentors.
definitely. From Christian school teachers that just built into me and didn't, thought that I could do something, and they made me believe that. And
So you were blessed.
yeah, in a number of ways too. Yes.
Michael, going to have you come back in a few minutes.
I'd love to.
Thank you already for sharing with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Our next guest is Maggie Delany, whom I have known to the point of tears and sighs and laughter and joys and jumping up and down. I have known Maggie nearly 40 years now, almost as long as Moses wandered in the wilderness. She has been a joy in my life, and my life would be poorer without Maggie in it. She has been a blessing, like Michael Vrbanac said moments ago, that I just didn't realize was there. And there are things that she just shared that I didn't even know about her skills and her qualifications, that she has co-chaired workshops and facilitated workshops and IEPs and all of that, because she has succeeded educationally. All of our guests today with physical disabilities have their master's degrees, lest anyone think that this is a shoddy bunch. Not so. Maggie, I'm going to be hard-nosed for a moment as your father. We're not going to pull any punches. Have you lost any jobs?
Yes.
More than one, right?
Yes.
Not fun, is it?
It's horrible.
Yeah. And those are some of the tears we've known, aren't they?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Particularly due to discrimination.
Yeah. Not always.
No.
No. And you're currently searching for work. I mean, you graduated from Kent School of Social Work down there at U of L,
Yes.
an outstanding social work school, as I didn't know at the time. You picked it. You had guidance from the Children's Law Center to head that way. I didn't appreciate at the time what a great school it is, but you graduated from there in 2006,
Correct.
and you have been in and out of employment since.
Yes.
Part of the reason you went to this Kent School of Social Work was that you struggled for employment after you graduated from NKU, correct?
Correct. Northern Kentucky University here in the Northern Kentucky area.
So off and on, this has been a 20-year battle, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. That's painful, not because I mind, but painful for any parent to watch their loved one go through that, especially when I know how hard you've worked. I'll tell the viewing audience, my family, many of the Delaneys are Roman Catholic, but that's not their religion. Their religion's work. Their languages work, they worship work. The solution to everything in life, salvation, is work. And I've never known a Delaney or any other human being on this earth work harder than my daughter, Maggie Delany. In high school, she would do 5 hours of homework a night. And we'd ask her teachers, does she have that much homework? And they'd say, she doesn't have to be doing that much. Maggie has worked nonstop, even when she's been searching for jobs, worked nonstop, churning out resumes and being online, searching job sites. This is not a person that lacks initiative. And I'm very, very proud to have known Maggie Delany, not just because she's my daughter, but because, as I've often told people, she can chew through brick. She is tenacious and persistent, unlike any human being I've ever seen. Well, we've said that. We've gotten that off our chest now.
Yes.
what do you feel comfortable sharing about some of your experiences, good or bad? What do you think would be helpful for people to know?
I think that persistence, determination, again, I can't emphasize it enough. Persistence, determination, and just having faith are keys to success. And without that positive faith, you will not be as successful in life, because you have to first and foremost be willing to help yourself. And knowing that I could drive from an early age, and that's not a joke. I may not legally be able to drive behind the wheel, but trust me, I do have a mind that I drive with and have driven with since an early age. I can do it. And even though I'm currently seeking full-time paid employment, have had jobs in the past, and have unfortunately experienced discrimination, I'm going to keep after it, because God does have a plan.
What kinds of discrimination, Maggie? I mean, you don't have to be too specific, but give folks an idea. I mean, did somebody push you down the steps, or?
Not that severe.
Okay.
But let me give you a couple of examples to those who are viewing. One example, I was hired for an adult daycare serving clients on different Kentucky state Medicaid waivers. 3 weeks into the job, I was told, Maggie, you are visually impaired. You have only the use of one hand. There is absolutely no way you can perform CPR and first aid. I was quite frustrated, said, well, give me a chance. There are accommodations, there are ways. I at least deserve a chance. I'm determined. They let me go. Not long after that, and to this very day, including just as recent as this May, I was certified, and again in May, recertified, and have been ever since. That is one example. And another example that readily comes to mind, hired into an employer for being able to simply do intake work. Did that quite extensively. You mentioned Children's Law Center. Did that there, as well as for one of my graduate internship opportunities. Well, they decided to change the job description after being hired and said, you have to be able to type so fast. And with only central vision and no peripheral vision on either eye, that can be a little bit challenging, but even more so with one hand. That wasn't going to stop me. I said, I can do this. But the reality is, I can only type as fast as I can type. And even if they would permit me to use voice programs and the technology that changes on a daily basis. So within about 4 months, they decided to let me go there as well.
And to folks that are listening and watching that may not understand some of the intricacies that can happen in the workplace, in at least one of those positions, the supervision changed.
Correct.
And the person that hired you was no longer the person that let you go, but rather a changeover in leadership and, in more importantly, in attitude.
Most definitely.
And those are the kinds of things that can take place in the workplace over which you have no control. The person who does the hiring may say, great, we need to have folks like yourself on board who are hardworking and who want to do this job, but then they leave, in one case, within a week. Didn't the person that hired you left?
Yes.
And the person succeeding them has a whole different attitude, maybe not favorable.
And sometimes it can appear that jealousy is an issue or somewhat threatening, because I do have a master's degree and other people in leadership roles may have either more experience and or only a bachelor's degree.
You've had to take jobs that were perhaps, a graduate level degree wasn't required, but in order to demonstrate your willingness and to work, sometimes, and then that could lead to complications in terms of peers.
Most definitely, and in fact, my last employment position, they would only require, and did only require, an associate's degree. And I experienced a lot of hostility and actually was threatened on several occasions. I do believe from things that this individual said, there was a lot of jealousy. Actually, she even felt like I was getting favoritism as a person with disabilities, but also, in addition to favoritism, felt like I was not qualified, that she had a problem with me on the team, because for this position we did have to travel quite a bit out in the field. My means of transportation were between my supervisor, myself, and HR. And I have no problem walking, going through the TARC, which is the bus system down in the Louisville, Kentucky area where I reside, as well as one of the best means of transportation that has come about, I'm sure many viewers have heard of, Uber and Lyft. Got to love Uber and Lyft.
Uber's had their share of problems recently. We won't go there, but
Lyft for sure.
Here's where I'm going with this, Maggie. As if things aren't difficult enough, and I alluded to this earlier with Larry, could you not have been served by someone coming in terms of support services to help navigate these complicated relationships, rather than them being dealt with in a retributive kind of way? Pam, our producer, is familiar with restorative justice, and rather than in a punitive manner, someone with the skills and knowledge to come in and help navigate this labyrinth of entanglement. Wouldn't the situation perhaps benefited, rather than leaving you to your own devices and that's what I've witnessed as your father. You're kind of out there on your own sometimes in the workplace. I mean, mom and dad can't come to the rescue. Wouldn't employers, employees, and everyone involved be served if someone could come in and say, hey, we can be a resource in this situation?
That is most definitely a good question, and yes, a suggestion. Could someone come in? One time, actually, I have dealt with both personally and professionally, as Larry is currently with the Office for the Blind in Covington here, or in Northern Kentucky, but I know other staff, and they came with one employer. Still, that particular employer did what they already had in their mind ready to do. And if that is the case, my experience, at least with this one employer, well, they just can't do the job anyways. They have that mindset. And to say it.
There's no doubt that a culture needs to change.
Correct.
But for now, in terms of increased self-awareness, we appreciate your being here today and helping folks to understand better just how challenging the situation can be, especially relationally. And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story. We'll be coming back in a few minutes if you're willing to do that. But thank you.
Sure.
Our next guest with regard to physical disabilities and employment is Steve Milloy. I can't easily describe, because it takes my breath away, what it means to be in Steve's presence on Sunday morning at St. John United Church of Christ. It was already a pleasure these many years to go and hear Keith Haithcock preach on Sundays. And then they already had such a wealth of musicians at St. John. The expression guitar pickers in Nashville has nothing on St. John when it comes to musicians. Very talented people. But one day in the last couple of years, Steve Milloy showed up to direct the choir and lead the music at St. John, and it's just a joy on Sundays. It is such a joy. He brings such a plethora of diversity and versatility to the music program at St. John that when I continually saw his name on the prayer list every Sunday in the bulletin for rheumatoid arthritis, I thought, my goodness, where do we go from here? This man is performing the way he does in pain, unless I'm misreading it, but I wasn't. Because in planning for this program, I thought about you as a possible participant. Your situation being a little bit different. I didn't think you were unemployed, but I wondered if you were anxious about hanging on to employment, and anxious perhaps in hanging on to a level that I have seen you present, that I know you want to maintain. And so I thought folks would benefit from your heart and what's going on with it. So Steve, thank you for being here today. And I'm going to say, you've already shared some of the accomplishments with just your title, but you have been an actor, you've been a singer, and as well as a keyboardist. You have been in Little Shop of Horrors as the plant. You have been in the Full Monty. You have just done a variety of things, and I'm going to stop and let you talk about yourself for a while, if you want to. If not,
Sure, no, it's okay. It's funny that you mentioned the Full Monty, which I did actually after I moved here in 2001 with a now defunct theater company called the New Stage Collective. And in it, I played basically an older black gentleman who I find it rather funny when I watched people who had taken some videos of certain rehearsals, and I would watch myself kind of slowly walk on the stage, not dealing with the arthritis that I'm dealing with now, and going, oh, that's going to really be me in about 2 years' time. And breaking out into that dance. If you know this show, there is a song in the show called Big Black Man, in which the character has a huge dance break. And a lot of those moves I probably wouldn't be able to do today, but I'd still love to have a chance at that role again. Yeah, when I decided to go back to school late in my life.
46?
Yes. Went and got my Bachelor of Music degree at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and was really dealing just with a lot of pain in my lower back, in my knees, and I could tell that my playing chops just weren't as sharp as they used to be. So I, finally went to a doctor, and they took some tests, and they basically said, you have rheumatoid arthritis in your hands. And you have some issues with your lower back and your knees. They put me on methotrexate and sulfasalazine. And that has helped a great deal. But it does scare me at times when some days I'm able to play just fine, and some days it just like it'll take just one finger to hurt, like the Holy Dickens. To really just kind of throw off my day or throw off my playing. So it takes a lot more time to practice and to prepare and painkillers. And that does scare me, because I know that, this is probably something I've inherited from my mom. And, in 5-10 years down the road, will I be able to play?
And you've thought about her, haven't you?
Yes, I have a lot. My mother, I wasn't from let's just say that my father died when I was 9 and he was 84. And I spent a lot of my younger years, pre-kindergarten, actually taking care of him while my mother went to work. So when he died, she kept working for a good 15, 20 years. And, she had me late in life. She was probably 48 when I was born. And I just watched her health and her walking deteriorate. And not at the time as a kid thinking that that was going to be, my lot in life. And now I'm here as I approach my mid-40s going, why am I having these problems? Why, there would be times when I would have back pain so debilitating that I would just crawl in a ball and not be able to move without excruciating pain. A couple of years later, they have me on the right medication. I'm doing exercises for it. But, really, unless I were to get an operation, I don't know how much you can, I don't want to exactly extend this finger too far because
Sure.
it give the wrong signal, but as you can see that it's pretty bent from the joints. And I'm not for sure if I want surgery on my hands because they're my bread and butter, but at the same time it may be the only thing I can do. But I'm going to keep working as long as I can with this problem.
And if anyone should think, well, why doesn't he, why is he just reliant on that? You are a gifted composer and arranger. I mean, that is part of the appreciation at St. John is that you can bring together so many different arrangements and make combinations of pieces that are creative. There's just no other word for it. So you don't just have to play, but I know you bring it all.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because a lot of my classmates who are 20 and 30 years younger than I was, they also have jobs or ministers of music at their churches where all they have to do is conduct. They don't have to play keyboard at all. And every job I have had in a church since I was 15, 16 years old, I have had to play and to conduct. That's just, my lot in life. So I'm thinking, why are these kids getting these jobs where they just have to, conduct and don't have to worry about playing parts and things like this? But I've been doing that now over 30 years. And I don't, unless we were to get an influx of money at St. John, I don't see me being able to release myself from the piano or the organ bench, which is fine.
And you run back and forth between
yes,
the two.
I do.
You do both on Sunday.
I wouldn't say run, but yeah, I do. I love being able to play, and there are times I really wish I could just play or just conduct. And as you were saying about the other jobs, I just wrote like a narrated choral work, which is about an hour long, talking about the life and times of civil rights activist Byron Rustin, which premiered in January. And another 6 choirs will be performing that throughout the United States over the upcoming year. So I do have other gifts and other talents that I can bring, and also that can help pay my bills. And I'd hate to lose any of them. I haven't been on stage now in a show, in a play really, for probably 7 years. And I would love to be able to do that again, and if I'm going to, I probably need to do it soon before the knees give way. Because there are just certain dance moves or, things that I cannot do anymore without basically holding on to a rail and making sure I can go down one knee at a time, which I never thought that would happen. And it's frustrating.
You shared with me, and we can edit this out if
That's quite all right.
that you spent a couple of days in bed with
Yes.
depressed,
Yes.
crying.
Especially when I had the back pain that was just so debilitating, and nobody really could tell me what it was. I just I really could not move, and painkillers, just the over-the-counter painkillers, were not killing it. Were not stopping or alleviating the pain. I finally found a decent chiropractor who was giving me some exercises and told me the reason why. I don't know what I do in my conducting or in my playing, that I overwork one muscle and don't work some others. But he's given me exercises to help with that. And I am so glad I have those exercises right now, because if I didn't, I know there would probably be another day where I would end up either in bed or on the floor crying and wondering, am I going to make it? Am I going to be able to do the jobs that I do right now? Sorry, just
No, man, no. That's all right.
When you're 20 and you're 30 years old, you don't really think about your body giving way, not being able to just drop to your knees to pick up something, or being able to stand up and conduct for 2 hours time, which I still do. I just need a day or two to recuperate.
You told me about a moment in conducting when you were hurting so bad, and
Yeah.
you got up and you began, and you said, "What pain?"
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The thing, that was just last summer, and I only had to conduct, a 4-minute piece. But at the same time, I was in so much pain going up to the podium. Some of my friends like to sing this theme from Sanford and Son when they see me walk sometimes. Anyway.
Shouldn't laugh.
But so I walked, I got to the podium, but as soon as I saw, I had, a good 400, 500 singers in front of me. And once I brought down that beat, that baton, and started conducting the piece, and the small combo I had in front, the pain was gone. Or at least I wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking about making this piece sound right, making them feel secure in singing this piece, making them feel secure in playing this piece, and portraying the feeling of that piece to the audience. So at that moment, there was no pain. When I conducted this concert with the Cincinnati Men's Chorus this past June, in the midst of doing, 2 sets, Act 1 and Act 2, I did not think about the pain. Music has been my savior. And I am so grateful to be able to share that. And to be able to do that, to get rid of, the feelings of pain, anxiety. And once all of that is over, of course, then I'm kind of, where's the ibuprofen? Where's the time? But during those times in performance, they're not there.
You shared with me, at least in your younger days, that you experienced more discrimination racially than you have because of disability.
That is quite true. I always found it interesting when I would go out for certain jobs, and people could see at the time that I had 15, 20 years of experience, but didn't have a degree. And they'd say, "Do you have?" They'd so you have all this wonderful experience, you have an award-winning book, but do you have a degree? And I would say no, and that would be the end of the interview for me. But yet there were other younger people, usually not black, who may have had a degree, may not have had a degree, had less experience than I did, but they would end up getting the job. And it was so frustrating. There was another friend of mine, an African American man who was older, but he was in great physical shape. And he once said to me, and I was probably in my mid-20s at the time, and he was probably in his late 40s. He said to me, if we went to one job and we were both up for the same job, and we both had the same qualifications, they would hire me over you just because I look better. And I was going, wait a minute. I have to deal with racism. I have to deal with looks. I've always felt that whenever I go out for a job, that I've had to be, if not 10 times better, I had to have more experience or be able to display more because of my skin color.
Superpowers.
Yeah. And it really, and then after I get the job, it seems that people would treat me in a way that they wouldn't treat somebody else who had the position because of my skin color. People have come up to me and said the rudest things. And I'm going, why are you doing this? Especially if I'm supposed to be a person who's a supervisor over you. Couldn't you think of a kinder, gentler way of saying the same thing? Because I see you do it to other people, but you don't do that to me. And so I have learned, not per se to take it, I just have to, but at the same time, understand that there are things that are deep-seated in America that may die out in my lifetime, may not. But I have to keep my cool, because if I were to blow my cool, I'd be out of a job or demoted or something. I have gone and applied for jobs in my teens. I thought of myself as a well-spoken person. And, I was going for my first job, applying at a Shoney's. They were looking for a host or a waiter. And I went and applied, and I thought, I can spell, I can write, I can speak, I can look presentable. And then, so I applied for a waiter position. I get hired as a cook. And at the time I said that, I said to myself, that's not the position I applied for. But I'll take it, it's a job. A job that I was totally unsuited for, as I discovered within less than a week. But it's just situations like that that just made me realize I have to up my game. I have to up my appearance. And, now I'm 52. I still feel at times I have to up my game, but I'm also at a point that it's like I have my paper. I just received my Master's of Music from CCM last year. I have a wealth of publications. I have people who respect me. And there are times when I just say, I am who I am, and this is how I present myself, and this is what I have to offer, and if you don't like it, it's okay. That you can't make worthy, you wash me in mercy, I am clean. Oh, 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 I am clean. Amen.